First tonight, locked up for life. The mother from Cambridgeshire who stabbed her daughters to death as they slept in their beds has been jailed for at least 33 years. It's one of the longest jail terms ever given to a woman in the UK.
Rekha Kumari Baker appeared untroubled as the judge ordered staff to take her down. Yesterday, the jury took just 35 minutes to find the former pub waitress guilty of murder. This report from our Home Affairs correspondent Sally Chidzoy.
Captured holding a kitchen knife, Rekha Kumari Baker, the mother who went on to use similar knives in the brutal killings of her two daughters, in a crime that's horrified the country. Today she displayed no emotion as she stood in the dock and faced the judge who sentenced her to a minimum of 33 years in prison. She will be an old woman by the time she faces any prospect of freedom. On sentencing Kumari Baker to life imprisonment, the judge, Mr. Justice Bean, told her most people will find it inexplicable that a mother could kill her own children, and you have given no explanation for it. He said in part the motive was probably her wish to retaliate against her former husband, David Baker, and destroy the happiness in his life. He told her, you knew quite well what you were doing and you were not mentally ill. Davina and Jasmine, he said, were cruelly cut down in the prime of life.
Rekha Kumari will not be eligible for parole until 2040, as the judge says today. That will make her 72 years of age. So, she's not eligible. She won't. The first application cannot happen before 2040.
Davina and Jasmine's father, David Baker, stayed away from court today, but prosecuting barrister John Farmer read his victim impact statement. In it, Mr. Baker said having his daughters taken away from me in such a brutal way and by the woman who was their mother has had an incalculable effect. He said Rekha Kumari always believed that her children were an extension of herself, existing to further her own life ambitions. At that point, his former wife mouthed the word rubbish and shook her head. Kumari Baker launched a frenzied attack on her two girls, stabbing them 68 times. She chose not to take the witness stand. The only time her voice was heard in court was in a poor quality recording of her making a phone call to a friend after she had murdered her children.
Call me back.
It's permeated the professional barrier of just about everybody involved. A very emotional case, and our deepest sympathies to the family of the friends of the girls who are left behind.
Kumari Baker stabbed her daughters 68 times with knives she bought from an Asda store. It was a cold and calculated attack. In prison, she'll be kept apart from other inmates for her own safety. Sally Chidzoy, BBC Look East, Cambridge.
The leader of the Liberal Democrats has told Look East he'd make improving rail travel one of his main priorities if he was in government. It comes as the rail passenger watchdog warns there are still major problems with punctuality in our region. We'll be hearing from the head of Passenger Focus in a moment. But first, this report from our political correspondent, Andrew Sinclair.
The Liberal Democrats have always been keen supporters of the train. This morning they staged this photo call in Bournemouth to protest about the state of the East Coast Main Line. Inside the hall, delegates queued up to criticise the rail companies for making as much money as possible out of travellers. Like this on the line from Bedford to London.
Free ATM machines replaced by ones demanding fees. Car park machines overcharging in off-peak hours. 4-car trains running instead of 8-car units. It's a Ryanair approach to fare add-ons. Except that's being unfair to Ryanair.
And several complained about their local service. The West Coast Main Line through Milton Keynes was accused of having the worst punctuality in Britain.
Imagine that, arriving at work late virtually every day, getting home from work late virtually every day. It's simply untenable as a way of travelling. Quite a few people left Milton Keynes. They actually moved away because they couldn't fulfil their job with the train service as it was.
Since privatisation, punctuality has improved along with the rolling stock, but the Lib Dems believe the present system needs overhauling. They want to keep franchises but make them longer than the present ones, so companies don't feel the urgency to make profits, with ministers able to take away those that don't work and keep fare rises to inflation or below.
Oh, it's a huge priority. I think we've lost sight of something really simple, which is that rail services are there for everyone. They're a utility. They shouldn't be a plaything for private companies.
Why not just renationalise them altogether?
Well, in a sense, It'd be so nice to be able to just sort of wave a magic wand and say, let's go back to an integrated rail system, though we shouldn't be nostalgic about that. It had problems of its own. It's just not practical.
The rail companies feel they're already doing a good job. 4 out of 5 passengers, they say, are satisfied. But the Lib Dems think they could do better. Andrew Sinclair, BBC Look East, Bournemouth.
Well, the chief executive of the rail passenger watchdog, Anthony Smith, is addressing a meeting in Bournemouth tonight. I spoke to him earlier and asked what the main issues of concern were for passengers.
We know that roughly 4 out of 5 passengers are pretty happy with most journeys that they make, but one of the main priorities for improvement remains getting more trains on time. It's the key thing that us passengers want. It's what we're really paying the money for. We want the train to arrive when it should do.
I know that you have some punctuality figures about to be published. What do they show for our region?
We've been doing a lot of extra work on some of the lines in East Anglia, just looking at the exact punctuality at some particular stations. What it shows is that on some busy routes, some commuters in the evening peak in particular are only getting to their home station 1 time out of 2 on time. Now, the train may be on time when it reaches the end of its journey, but are the passengers on time at the stations in between? That's what we're going to do more work on. That's what we're going to bring more focus on for passengers.
So you're saying the figures actually don't tell the whole story there?
The figures don't tell the whole story because, for a start, the train is timed at its point of where it terminates, where it stops its journey. It's timed there within 5 minutes. There's already a 5-minute gap built in. And what is not really published are the figures for the stations in between. That's what we're going to focus on more, because we know that passengers don't think that punctuality is exactly where the industry thinks it is.
There's still a lot of debate about whether trains should be in public or private ownership. What's your view of what passengers feel about this?
I don't think us passengers really care who owns the trains. What we want is a decent train service at a decent price. We want the trains to turn up on time, we want them to be clean, we want to get a seat, we want the staff to be courteous, and when things do go wrong, we get some help and some information about what to do. What matters to passengers is what happens on the platform on the day, and that's a result of investment, long-term investment in the railways, and management attention on the absolute detail of what's going on. That's what's got to be kept up day in, day out. That's what us passengers want.
Anthony Smith, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And this weekend, the Labour Party conference gets underway in Brighton. The politics show will be live from there.
To come and look